Okay, so we have we're going to look at the area of Birchas Hamitzvos. We're going to spend the next couple of weeks probably on, especially on Parak Yud Aleph of the Rambam's Halachos brachos, and that will give us there's a lot of different sugyas on it, but they're all obviously connected in terms of that the whole chapter discusses the brachos on mitzvos. So what I want to focus on the first shiur is actually not even getting into the 11th parak of Halachos brachos, but focusing mostly on the first parak, which is the nature of Halachos brachos. What's the nature of Halachos brachos? What's the nature of a bracha that we recite on mitzvos that we perform? Okay, so let's look at the first source here. So we're going to look at the first four halachos in Halachos brachos. Okay, so the Rambam when he starts going into an area, right? So this is like, for instance, here is the laws of brachos. So the first couple of halachos are imperative, right? These are imperative halachos. They really teach us the nature of brachos, and that's definitely true of these first four halachos in Halachos brachos. So the Rambam says as follows: mitzvos hasei min Torah levarach acher achilas mazon. Okay, so the Rambam starts off by saying that there's a Torah command to make a bracha on Birchas, on eating, after eating. Okay, once somebody finishes eating, so then there is a Torah command for them to recite a blessing. Right? So the pasuk says you eat, you're satisfied, and then you bless Hashem. Ve'eno chayev min Torah ela im kain sava, and you're not, the obligation to make a bracha after eating is only after you're satisfied, right? So if you just eat but you're not satisfied, so then from the laws of the Torah, you're not obligated to make a bracha. Shneimar v'achata v'savata uberachta, right? That doesn't say v'achata uberachta; it says v'achata v'savata uberachta. Midivrei sofrim acha afilu kazayis mevarach achara. But the Rabbanan came along and said, okay, what is satisfaction? What does it mean that you're satisfied to the point where we generate an obligation to make a bracha? That's where you have even just an olive's worth of food. That's enough. Okay. The Rambam says as follows. He says, "Midivrei sofrim levarach al kol halacha beisir levarach al kol machal tchila v'akar chach yem." Right. So and then the Rabbanan came along and said, okay, midoraisa from the Torah, you have to make a bracha after you eat, but we're also going to institute that you should make a bracha before you eat. Okay, so before you get benefit, you have to make a bracha. This is a rabbinic idea. Right, and even if you just eat or drink a little bit, so you have to make a bracha, and then you can enjoy. And also, if you smell something good, you have to make a bracha, and then you can get benefit from the good smell. And anybody who makes a bracha, he gets benefit from something in this world and doesn't make a bracha, it's as if you had me'ilah, which is a prohibition of gaining something from the Beis Hamikdash, right? If I dedicate something to the Beis Hamikdash, so that's I can't use it. Okay, that would be asur. So he says, okay, and then also, even if you're not satisfied on a rabbinic level, you have to make a bracha after whatever you eat and whatever you drink. As long as you drink a revius, and as long as you eat a kazayis. And just tasting a little bit, you don't need to make a bracha. Okay, that's the second halacha. Okay, now here's where our information starts. So the Rambam says kashem. So kashem means, right, for the same, let me put it up here, sorry. Kashem means that in the same way, okay? So it's not talking about mechanics in terms of like the action, okay? But it's what kashem means is that there's a conceptual connection, okay? That there is the same concept that obligates us to make a bracha on getting benefit is the same obligation that we have here, and this is what he says. So conceptually, whatever is generating the obligation for me to make a bracha and then get benefit from this world, so too the same idea applies with mitzvos, that first I make a bracha and then I perform the mitzvah. The rabbis also instituted a lot of brachos as praise or thanks, or derech bakasha, or requests, right, of God. What's the idea? In order that you always remember Hashem, even if it has nothing to do with getting any benefit from the world, or doing a mitzvah, seeing lightning, right? It has nothing to do with benefit or anything. Okay, so our first two questions here is, okay, so the Rambam now talks about the obligation to make a bracha on a mitzvah. So what's the nature of the Birchas mitzvos? And then what's the conceptual connection between Birchas mitzvos and Birchas nehnין that the Rambam compares the two? Okay, because the Rambam could have just said that we have a obligation to make a bracha before we do mitzvahs. He didn't have to say ukashem shemavarcha mahana. So when the Rambam says ukashem shemavarcha mahana, there's a reason why he's making that point. Okay, then the Rambam says here in Halacha Dalet, ninsu kol brachos kulan shlosha minim. So it comes out that what do we have? All the brachos are of three different kinds. Brachas hana, right? Bracha on gaining benefit from something. Brachas mitzvos, or brachas hodah shein derech shevach hodah, and brachas of thanks, which is a bracha of praise and thanks. In order that we always remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that we have all of him. So here my question is like this. It's one thing if the Rambam goes on for many halachos and then summarizes what he said. But here, the Rambam's only gone 3 halachos, right? And now he's got to say, nimsu kol brachos. Now we see that there's 3 different types of brachos. So why does the Rambam have to summarize after only 3 halachos? And all of us could do the math, right? He's very explicit in terms of what the different categories of brachos are. This isn't so why does the Rambam have to spend an entire halacha explaining essentially what he just said for like 8 or 9 lines worth of text? So why does he have to go ahead and summarize for us? Okay, those are our first 3 questions. Okay, so the Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav, had an explanation for this. It's really hard to I mean, we're going to see Birchas Hamitzvos in a different light from a different Rishon, but when it comes to this area, it's very difficult to see how you could understand the Rambam in any other way than the way the Rav Soloveitchik explained it. And he says that Kashem shemavarcha ma'ana kach mevarcha kol mitzvah. So if you go back to the Birchas Hana, so what's the whole idea? He says that midivrei sofer mevarcha kol machal tchila. First you eat, or first you make a bracha on any food that you're going to have, and then you get benefit from it, right? So it seems, right, it's clear we have a concept in halacha called a matir, a license, right? And what a license, it allows you to do something. So it seems very clear here that you're not allowed to eat, to the point where the Rambam says, right, he's quoting Gemara, where he says that if you do get benefit, and you didn't make a bracha, so then you're over a me'ilah. You violated this Torah prohibition, right? And again, it doesn't mean it literally. You're not violating a daraisa, but you're violating this Torah prohibition of getting benefit without making a bracha. So there's a prohibition, and then with the bracha, I'm allowed to go ahead and get benefit. Okay, so the bracha is allowing me to get benefit. Okay, so that's clear that's the idea of Birchas nehnין. Now, if we go back to Birchas mitzvah, right? He says kashem shemavarcha ma'ana. So what's the kashem? What's the conceptual connection here? So the idea is that just like I can't get hana from this world without making a bracha, right? So too, it seems now, and this is what the Rav says, you can't get benefit, you can't do a mitzvah in this world without making a bracha. Okay, so the bracha allows me to eat and allows me to smell something good, to get benefit from this world. And the bracha allows me, the Birchas mitzvah now allows me to do a mitzvah that previously I was not allowed to do. So there would be some sort of isser of my blowing shofar without making a bracha beforehand. Go ahead, Ezra.
Yeah, there isn't a bracha on every mitzvah.
Oh, okay, we're gonna get to that. We're definitely gonna get to that, right? That's in two topics from now, right? Mm-hmm. Why there are certain brachos that don't have a mitzvah. Okay, excuse me, certain mitzvos that don't have a bracha, right? We definitely have to get to that. But it seems here, right, that and there's no such thing as food without a bracha, right? We don't have. There is, but the idea is that that's not considered hana. But there are definitely mitzvos that we do that we staka, right? We don't right? We don't have a bracha on staka, right? So and you can't say that staka is not a mitzvah, and that's why we don't have a bracha, right? If I eat dog food, so I don't make a bracha on dog food. The reason why I don't make a bracha on dog food is because we don't consider that hana, right? I can't be right. It's not enough. So therefore, I can eat it without a problem. But you're not going to say that about mitzvos. But it is clear here from what the Rav is saying that that's what the Rambam holds as to what a Birchas mitzvah is. But here's my question. I understand why I can't get benefit from I don't know, a glass of water without making a bracha, right? So I understand the need for a license there. It belongs to God. I'm gonna take, right? It's a famous Gemara, right? So I have to have some sort of a license to partake of the pleasures of this world, right? Because Hashem haaretz molo, right? That everything belongs to God. So that I understand. Okay, but right, excuse me. Why do I need a license to do something that God commands me to do it? Shouldn't the command itself be a license, right? So if the Rav says that the idea in the Rambam here is that we need a license to do a mitzvah, that sounds very funny. Right? I need a license to do something that I normally wouldn't be allowed to do, but a license to do a mitzvah, that sounds a little strange. Okay, that's difficult to understand. Okay, then we go along and say like this. Then we say another question. Okay, now we make a bracha, right? Why do we make a bracha before we eat? In order to remember Hashem specifically when we have a need, right? What's the need when I eat? I'm hungry. So since I'm hungry, I have a need, and therefore I make a bracha. Okay. So right. So and that tells me where the fulfillment of my need comes from. It comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But where is the idea of remembering Hashem, right? Where does that come from in a time of mitzvah, right? How is the time of mitzvah the same sort of need that I've got to go ahead and remember HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That sounds a little strange. Okay, so those are our first 5 questions. Our last question here comes from the Ritva, okay? And the Ritva says as follows. It says, Tam zeh she'amru chazal levarach al mitzvah. What's the reason why we have a bracha, a mitzvah over l'asiyasan, right? We're going to get into that at some point about that we have to make a bracha before we do the mitzvah. We can't make a bracha after we do the mitzvah. It has to be before. That's what over l'asiyasan is. Kidei sheyiskadesh tchila bebracha v'gala v'yodia shehu osa samat nei mitzvos Hashem yisbarach. Okay, so what's the idea according to the Ritva? That I have to demonstrate. Okay, and here I'm doing it verbally. I have to demonstrate with a bracha that this thing that I'm doing is this action that I'm doing, whatever it is, I'm doing because it's a mitzvah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so when I sit in my sukkah here in Israel, it's very nice, right? It's cool sukkah's time, and it's a great sitting outside. I sit outside anyway, even if it wasn't sukkah, we'd sit outside. So how are you going to know that this week I'm sitting outside because it's the mitzvah of sukkah, right? Maybe I'm just sitting outside because I have a nice porch and that's where my sukkah is, and I sit outside all the time. So who's to say that I'm doing this now because of the mitzvah of sukkah? So what do I do? I make a declaration with a bracha, right? And so I'm miskadesh, it says the Ritva. I'm miskadesh this action by making a bracha first, and that's the nature of brachas mitzvos according to the Ritva. Okay, so let's understand this. How do we understand the idea of a need for a declaration before a mitzvah? Okay, so we've got 6 questions that we're dealing with here. Okay, the first one is, what's the nature of Birchas mitzvah? Right? What is a Birchas mitzvah? Right? Okay. What's the connection in the Rambam between the Birchas mitzvah and Birchas nehnין? That the Rambam compares the two. Right? Conceptually, what's the idea? Why does the Rambam repeat those 3 categories of brachos in Halacha Daled of the first parak of Hilchos brachos when we just saw them, and it's pretty obvious. He just went through them. Why does he have to repeat them and summarize? How do we understand the need for a license for a mitzvah? Why do I need a license for a mitzvah? It doesn't, right? I'm commanded that the command itself should act as the license, right? That's how could God command you to do something that you can't do, right? It's like like when you say a license, you give an analogy. I don't think we need an analogy. I think it's the point is pretty obvious, but like it would be as if the government tells you have to drive from one end of the state to the other, but then tells you that you're not allowed to do that until you have a license. I mean, you just told me to drive. What do I need a license for? You just told me to drive. Okay, and then the real idea behind the Birchas nehnין is that we make the bracha before we eat in order to remember Hashem specifically in a time of need. Okay, so we know where the fulfillment of our need comes from. So how does this idea of remembering Hashem specifically at a time of need, right? How does that work when it comes to a mitzvah? It's not a time of need. And lastly, how do we understand the Ritva's explanation of a Birchas mitzvah? That the idea behind it is that we need to declare that we're doing this action as a mitzvah. How do we understand Birchas mitzvah in the eyes of the Ritva? Okay. Now, the idea that I want to say, the svara that I want to say is as follows: that we have an issue in life that we tend to become too comfortable, right? That's right. We tend to become too comfortable. I'm not talking like psychologically. Just we tend to live our lives in a casual way. So look at this mitzvah, the 4th mitzvah of the Torah, which I don't know if we did it together. Maybe, I don't know. Mitzvah Ravius Ushitzvanu Lahamin Yirasal Yisal Fachem Mimenu. Lonia Kekofrim Ahochen Bekari. Right? Avalnira Bias Ansho Bechol Ace. Okay, so the idea is that we have to be somewhat scared, right? The word here is scared, and not to be people that just walk around without any awe of God, right? And any fear even of punishment at any time. Who Amar Yisala as Hashem Elkecha Tiras. This is the idea of Yiras Hashem. Okay, the idea behind Yiras Hashem is that we have some sort of an awareness to the point of almost fear. Excuse me, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gemara Sanhedrin Amru Al Derech Vikuach V'Amru V'Nokev Shem Hashem Mos you must, that if you erase God's name, you should die. Ve'ema Perushe Dechsiv Asher Niknu B'Shemos V'Azhara Min Hashem Elkecha is Hashem Elkecha Tira. Right, this idea Azhara of fearing God. Rotzal Amar Ulai Amru Nokev Shem Hashem Hu Sheyizkar Hashem Avad Melubtishi Yivarech. Right, V'Im Tomar Eza Avon Bazeh Amru Sha'azav Hayira Kim Yiras Hashem Shelo Yizkar Shema Olavatala. Right, so this becomes the whole idea that of just stop mentioning HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. It's interesting because you see, right, what do a lot of people point to the medrash about Yaakov and Esav, right? When Yaakov dressed up as Esav, so he put fur on and he came in with the food that Esav wanted. He got it from his mother, and Yaakov says, "You're Kol Yaakov, but you die Esav," right? So your voice is like as Yaakov's voice, but your hands, you feel, right? Yitzchak was blind, so he says that you feel like Esav. So on the one hand, he said, like physically, if you feel like Esav, but Kol, your voice sounds like Yaakov. So on Pashup Shot, it's because Yaakov's voice was different than no two people have the same voice. So his voice sounded like Yaakov's voice. He recognized one son's voice over the other. They had 2 different voices. But Rashi brings in a medrash that says that it wasn't so much like how Yaakov sounded or the tone, but it was rather the words that he was using. That Shem Hashem was always on Yaakov's lips. He would always reference the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So that's where a lot of people get this idea that you say, "Oh, how are you doing, Baruch Hashem?" Right? Like, they write B'siyata D'Shmaya on their papers, and they And whenever Ezra Hashem, right? They say, oh, where are we going to be? We're going to be with God's help. We'll do this next time, And they're always mentioning Kodesh Baruch Hu's name. When you say, like, where do you see that that's a virtue? So you see that. So he says that that's what you see in by Yaakov. Yaakov did that, so it was virtuous that he always brought up a Kodesh Baruch Hu's name. The Halachos talks about it, says the opposite. He says that really a person, and not that Yaakov obviously did anything wrong, but just that Yaakov was at a certain level where he was able to do it. But he said before a person says Hashem's name, and we're not talking about like Kodesh Baruch Hu's name as it appears in Chumash, and there's an isser to say levatala. But whenever a person references the Kodesh Baruch Hu, it should be with a sense of awe, right? There should be a sense of yira when they do that. So it's to the point where Rav Kafach in his commentary on the Halachos, so he wrote that where did it come from that Jews say, always talk about Kodesh Baruch Hu, and they mention Kodesh Baruch Hu all the time. If the real Hashkafas HaTorah is that a person should not constantly mention Hashem, so where does it come from that a person that we do this? That, right, the firmest people in the Jewish community are always talking about a Kodesh Baruch Hu, right? They're saying it all the time, and it's not necessarily with this great sense of awe. They're doing it very casually. So where does that come from? So Rav Kafach says it actually comes from the Muslims. He says the Muslims, if you see, before any Muslim starts a speech, and by the way, if you look at the transcripts of all the Muslim countries before they start speaking at, let's say, the United Nations, it's like 3 or 4 sentences talking about how great God is. And they very much always reference God. So the Jewish communities in Arab lands, just as the Ashkenazi communities took a lot from Christianity, so the Jews that were in Arab lands took a lot from Arabs. So one of the things they took was this constant mentioning of Kodesh Baruch Hu's name, which was not something that Judaism looked upon as a virtue if you weren't saying it with a sense of awe. So that's what the Rambam is saying here, that the whole idea of a bracha levatala, of not mentioning of not making a bracha that's unnecessary. So that whole idea is an aspect of Yiras Hashem, that we're very careful before we go ahead and say HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. There's a sense of awe, right? That's the mindset that a person has to have of Yiras Hashem. Okay. So what I want to say is that a mitzvah, a bracha, right, is designed in order to make sure that we don't do the action that we're about to engage in all 3 categories. Okay, in all 3 categories of brachos, right? So nehanין, we're about to get hana from the world, Birchas mitzvah, or lastly, like some sort of phenomena that Chazal attached to a bracha to. So we don't approach those in a casual manner. The mitzvah, okay, the bracha ensures that whatever we're about to do or relating to some phenomena that just occurred, we don't do in a casual way. Okay, that's what I want to say. The nature of a bracha is that we don't. And a Birchas Hamitzvos, what's the nature of Birchas Hamitzvos? Is designed to prevent the person from fulfilling a mitzvah in a casual manner, where they just approach a mitzvah as, okay, we're doing a mitzvah here. Right? So I'm waving a palm branch, right? Okay, now this a shofar. I've been blowing shofar for 20 years. It's not a big deal, right? What's the big deal? So okay, so I know I could do this with my eyes closed and without even the koreh telling me what sound to do next. And it's very easy, shofar blowing, right? Because these are all actions. You want me to sit outside on my porch for the whole week? Okay, no big deal. So I'll eat and I'll sleep outside on the porch the whole week. It's pleasant weather. There's no big deal, right? So I'll go ahead and do that. So my mitzvos can become very casual, right? I could be without any problem. The same thing is true with Birchas Nehanין, right? So food can just become this thing where I eat. Why? Because what's the big deal? I go to the supermarket, I get something to eat. If I was a farmer, so I go out to my field, I'm hungry. I pulled out a tomato, I pulled out a grape, and I had myself a salad, right? So that's a good salad, but whatever. I have food to eat. It's not that big of a deal, right, for me to eat. Okay, I need to eat, I eat. What's the big deal? So Chazal came along and said, no, you shouldn't you shouldn't eat in a casual manner. You should recognize the fact that food is a bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? It's literally a result of hashgacha, because one of the ways HaKadosh Baruch Hu rewards and punishes us is by having enough food, right? Famine is a punishment, right? It says in Shema, right? So that's one of the ways that we punish. Right? If you listen to the mitzvos, so Kodesh Baruch Hu gives you food. It gives you your plants, and your farms will be blessed with great produce. And if you don't follow the mitzvos, so then it won't be, right? That's what we have. So the idea is that you shouldn't take food casually. In the same way, kashem, right? The Rambam said, kashem shemivarchem alana, kach mevarchem al birchas mitzvos. You shouldn't have this casual awareness, okay? And that's why the Rambam goes ahead and summarizes right after Halacha Gimel. He summarizes, even though we don't need a summary, we can all count on our own, right? So we don't need a summary, but the Rambam goes ahead and summarizes all three categories of brachos in order to tell you that, yes, there are three different categories of brachos. And each of the categories comes for a different area of our lives, right? So there's Birchas on Nehnין, there's Birchas on mitzvos, and there's Birchas Shevach V'Hodoya, right? So Birchas on Nehnין is on pleasure, mitzvos is on a mitzvah I'm about to do, and Shevach V'Hodoya is on some sort of phenomena in order to remember Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, so yes, but they all relate. They're all one unit brachos. And what's brachos? It's the proper way of relating to things in our world by making sure that we have this yiras shamayim, this yiras Hashem for. Okay, so our fourth question was, wait, hold on a second. Why do I need a license according to Salvation in the Rambam, right? That the Birchas mitzvah acts as a license to do the mitzvah, right? So what's the idea? Right, so the idea is that it's usher for me to do a mitzvah in a casual way. I can't just do a mitzvah in a casual way. It's completely forbidden for me to do a mitzvah in a casual way. How would I be allowed to do a mitzvah in a casual way? That's not allowed. So what do we say? The only way you can do a mitzvah is first you take a step, right, an oral declaration, which then ensures that the mitzvah is no longer done in a casual way. So Rav Soloveitchik looked at that in the Rambam, right, and said that what's the Rambam telling us here? He's saying that the best way of ensuring that we don't do mitzvos in a casual manner is by going ahead and requiring a license in order to do the mitzvah. That ensures, okay, that ensures that you don't do it. Okay, so now, and that's the need, right? We said that Birchas on Nehnין, right, is all about like you're in a time of need, hunger, and therefore you need to make a bracha, because what's the problem? The time of need is what brings on this casual relationship to the world around you. I'm in need, I'm hungry, so I don't have to think about anything else. I just have to think about fulfilling my desire, right? So therefore we say, no, that's specifically when you need to make the bracha at a time of need. Okay, so it's not that the time of need is what dictates it, but rather it's the risk of a casual relationship to what you're about to do. When it comes to a mitzvah, that risk presents itself right before you do the mitzvah, right? So it's not that the command, right? You'd say, well, according to the Rav, what do I need a command to be a license? I'm commanded, of course I should do it, but the command tells you have to do it. The Birchas mitzvah isn't saying that it's usher to do it, it's saying it's usher to do it in a casual manner. So the mitzvah itself is by definition not enough, right? That's not enough to act as a license. That's the idea. Okay. Okay, then going on here. Okay, the last thing we want to understand is the Ritva. Okay. The Ritva says that you need a bracha in order to declare that this is not that this action I'm doing is not just a regular day. So now we understand, right? We understand where the Ritva is coming from. Why do I need to make a declaration that I'm not just doing this, as a regular activity to enjoy myself, right? So what's the idea? So the idea is that this is something that's unique. It's something special, right? I'm doing something that I shouldn't be looking at in a casual way, and so therefore, what makes it not casual? What's going to make this action? The action itself is undeterminable to be a mitzvah action, right? I have no idea that this is a mitzvah action. There's nothing that tells me about any action in my life that this is by definition a mitzvah, right? There's nothing that we could say that, okay, that has to be a mitzvah. There's, right? Okay, so every single thing that we do, right, by nature of who we are as humans, the action could be for whatever reason. Who knows whatever wacky reasons we do things for, right? So therefore, I have to declare that what I'm doing here is not simply for secular purposes. What I'm doing here is for a mitzvah, and that allows that shows, that puts in that yiras shamayim, right? The yiras Hashem that we have to have when we approach different actions. And therefore, by declaring it, then that's clear that what I'm doing now is for a mitzvah purpose. Okay, that's so just to sum up, what's the idea? The idea here is that the nature of a Birchas Hamitzvah is that it's designed to ensure that we don't take whatever actions we're about to do, whether it's in this case for a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah, and just do it in a casual manner. That's what we're ensuring against. Okay, and then you have the Rav, and okay, so what we're going to do is, for the rest of Parak Aleph, I don't know how long it's going to take us, but it's a fascinating parak. But we're going to keep referencing back to this svara, and coming back to it and showing how now it applies to so many different halachos when it comes to Birchas and mitzvah. Okay.
Thank you.
See you next week.